Hey there, and welcome to Create a Place podcast. I'm Kristina York, co-founder and principal at Create & Co. Architecture and Interior Design Studio. I'll also be your guide to workplace design, culture, and well-being. We've got a lot of great guests coming up, so grab your coffee, tea, or cocktail and pull up a seat for some great conversations and some valuable takeaways. Hey, Kelly, welcome to Create a Place podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. So you are Kelly Primeau, all things marketing company. We're in this gorgeous studio that you set up. Yes. Just tell us a little bit about you, just for the folks that don't know.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Kelly Primeau, and I am the founder of a couple different businesses. Actually, we're sitting right here in Second Soul Studios, which is a full-service production studio. We do everything from photography here, podcasting, just like this one, which is really cool that you're interviewing me. I don't normally get interviewed, so that's awesome. I'm always the behind the scenes. It's podcasting, and we also do video production. And it's also an event space as well. And I've also am the owner of CEA Marketing. We are a full service digital marketing and advertising agency. And I've been in business for 27 years, so I've been doing this a long time.
Yes.
And just recently started Kelly Primeau Consulting. And that consulting business is something I recently started because I felt that I wanted to get back to the smaller business community because I really feel like a lot of people struggle a lot with their marketing. So I wanted to find a way to help guide them and help them learn how to do marketing the right way and to help guide them. So I'm doing a lot of fun things with that right now also. And it's, to me, that's very rewarding doing that.
I love that. So you're basically enabling them to do a little bit of a DIY marketing strategy and not have to, go the full lengths of engaging a marketing company. I think that's a great, segue into letting them do some of that on their own. And that's why I'm here, right? I met you through some Working Women of Tampa Bay small business events that were here in the studio. And then you had a Reels event with Tara Q, who is amazing mutual friend of ours.
Love Tara.
I came in for the Reels event, and that was so fun. And you guys sitting here watching me and encouraging me and, kind of putting the bug in my ear about the podcast. And I think that was really funny because that was the day really that I decided to go ahead and do this, right? I had always talked about it, and there's no way I was going to be able to DIY a podcast because owning a business, being a consultant myself in the world of design and architecture, and I just fell in love with you guys, and I thought, well, let's just do the podcast. That sounds great, and then you both went, yeah, but you're going to do a video version. And so here we are, with a full set, and I'm so grateful, that you guys pushed me into that space. And now we are several episodes in, and I just thought it'd be fun to have you come by and talk about, that space, and also being a woman business owner. And we've both been in business for almost 30 years, respectively. And I would love to talk a little bit about what that means. A lot of times we talk about the corporate space, and a lot of this podcast is about, culture and connection and psychology of space. And I think what a lot of these conversations do kind of a disservice to are the small businesses, right? We have, 10 people or less or in that realm, and we're dealing with the same issues.
We are dealing with the same issues.
People are not talking about that in the same way. They're talking about CEOs and, C-suites and this like hierarchical, situation. And we don't have all of that. So how are you doing right now, post-COVID and evolving into the future as a small business? What does that look like for you?
I've made some major changes, like huge changes over the last 2 years. A little bit hard for me to go through, I have to honestly say, because I had a pretty big team that worked for me for quite some time, anywhere from 10 employees to 20. After COVID, a lot had changed, and obviously a lot of my team started, working from home more. I had this big building that I own that we all worked out of, and for a while I was, trying to pull them back into the office, and which we did for a while. But there was just a lot of changing going on during that time period. think there was a lot of other opportunity out there, you know, for that's when a lot of the people were getting poached from a lot of the big companies and things like that. So that started happening a little bit.
Well, because they could work anywhere, right?
Yeah,
So then they have all of these opportunities and options.
yeah, there was so many more options, and it was definitely an employee's market for, you know, finding really good high-paying jobs. Like corporate was just pulling them out of the small businesses, and it was making it hard for us during that time period to hire because you're looking at having to probably pay 30% more than what we were used to. So that was a really tough time period. I think I felt like when I started interviewing, I went through 100 people.
Wow.
A couple different times, had a few wrong hires until I hired my star, who you know, Miss Christy, who's been with me now for a couple years.
She's amazing.
Yeah, so during that time, it was tough during that time because I had my beautiful office, which I just renovated it completely, redesigned everything about a year before COVID happened to get it set up more functionally for the work culture that we had in there. And being an agency, you always want your space to be really creative looking.
Sure.
and have that.
It should reflect your brand. It should
Yeah.
have your work product celebrated. Yeah. I think so many people have the same story renovating or, you know, coming into more of a, you know, a human-centric design,
Yes.
you know, before COVID. And I think, you know, the misconception maybe is that all of a sudden we change everything after COVID. The reality is we were already making changes. We've already been talking about this for years, and you know, and the culture is so important in your space too. So I'm curious, we can go back to when you were hiring and interviewing.
Yes.
Were you looking just locally, or were you too leaning into the idea of being able to pull from remote sources to have someone do you know, more remote work or contract work or something that looked a little different than what you were used to?
I've changed a lot. Because you asked my old team, I was very old school. Like during COVID, I'm like, you're all you know, after about a month out, you're all coming back.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting back because I'm a big believer in that collaboration too, because that's one of the things I feel that you miss when you work from home is having the teams being able to work together, learn from each other. So it's one of the things I do miss.
Especially in a creative environment.
Right.
I can definitely see that.
But to answer your question, when I was looking, no, I was looking more locally because I wasn't 100% sold on remote work during that time period. Because I also had, I guess maybe it was with some of the people that had worked for me, I realized that some of those team members working remotely was just going to be a disaster.
Oh, yes.
Like they needed to be in the office, where some people can be and some people can't. And like, how do you choose who can work from home and who can't when you know that certain people they're going to need to be in the office, so you can kind of keep an eye on them.
Yes.
So
Maybe
it was
some
just
boundaries.
boundaries. So I was really looking local, and I struggled a lot from all those different aspects of people wanting to work from home, the higher salaries, like, because I couldn't afford to hire as many people as I wanted to. Still kind of the case now because of, you know, everything's just gone up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's just, everything's changed a lot. But I also realized as well by, you know, taking the time and, you know, maybe offering to pay a little bit more for the right people, you're going to have somebody or a team of people that you can actually trust to work from home and do the job. I just don't think I was that trusting based on either the people that I had. Not that they weren't bad people or anything, or great employees. It's just some people thrive more in an office environment than working from home.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a universal issue still today. I mean, you know, from 10 people to 10,000 people, you know, that is still the issue. How do you, you know, kind of give that universal equity to letting people decide when they need to come in, but also giving them those boundaries, you know? And I had a discussion recently with someone that kind of brought that up, like, maybe leaders, you know, business owners are actually wind up doing a little bit of a disservice to the employees by not giving them those really good guardrails, you know, could kind of go off the deep end. Like you said, when we're in that kind of employee market, you know, they could kind of write their check, write their schedule and all of that, and they decide what they want to do and what's best for them. But also, if we're not being transparent, like you, like, this is what I want, this is what's important to me in my culture, to have you here, not necessarily because I don't trust you, but because I know that we work better together.
Yes.
And then that compromise comes in, but you can take a day or two that you can work from home, or and do you think that that's how it kind of worked for you as you went from really wanting everybody in all the time to like embracing more of that remote work or hybrid work, to give them
Yeah,
some flexibility?
it did. I mean, because I was working so hard at reorganizing a lot of my businesses during this time period, which I tend to do. This is like I think my third or fourth reorganization of a company, just realizing the changes ahead. I chose to kind of bring my team down really small, but we're at the point now where we're starting to scale again. So with just a couple of us, we did work from home quite a bit, and it was fine for all of us. But now that we're getting ready to move and start adding some more people, it's important. I'm going to probably have people, let's come back and work out of the studio once or twice. And your younger team members that you bring on, I feel that it's very important for them to work in the office, because there's no way they're going to be able to learn from working from home.
Right.
So they're just, and I find that, and I've heard that from a lot of my other agency partners that I talk to. It's like, yeah, your senior members are fine doing that because they know what to do, but your younger team, they're just getting started. So they really need to have that mentorship and that collaboration, which is so key. And it's hard to get that from a Zoom call.
Oh, yeah.
I think you need to have that one-on-one, or that team that's working together, that they can see how that works. And even back when I had my whole team in here, it was so awesome because we would have those meetings in our conference room where we would all have our time to really strategize for our clients. Not that we don't strategize now, it's just it's done
Sure.
much differently than how we did things before. But I really I miss that, actually. And I think now that I'm starting to bring on some new team members and start thinking about the future, I'm more energized than ever, because I realize that working from home and kind of being like that, I don't know, it's just a different feeling than it is like, okay, like I really love being around my team, in person, that they make me happy when I'm with them.
Yes.
So it's just that really great feeling. So I look forward to making some of those changes here in the very near future.
Amen to all that. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of, not only leaders, but also employees lose sight of, are those points exactly. Yes, your senior people can work from home, they know what they're doing, but how are we going to mentor this up and coming, multiple generations that are coming into the workforce right now? How are they mentored? How are they going to learn the business? How are they going to learn the lingo, what works, what doesn't work? How, like you said, the intangibles, like being energized by each other, is something I think that is so undervalued in any size team right now, is realizing that is a very mutual, effect that happens, and it can be super positive. It can also be super negative if you've got somebody that's perpetrating that. So, you kind of have to navigate those things. But for the most part, there's this energy. And, while you're in a Zoom room and you have a great meeting, it's what happens in those 10 minutes after the meeting, right? That's the most important. The Zoom call gets turned off, and now here we are, the ones that are left, in person. That's where those major connections happen. What did you do this weekend? Oh my gosh, we had a great time. We saw this concert, like all of the things that aren't necessarily going to come up in a Zoom, and I feel like while you should have the freedom to be able to work from home when you need to, if you need to focus and all, you're missing out on so much by not coming in. Not saying you have to come in every day, all day, but let's face it, there is a lot of that, that happens, just the water cooler kind of talk, or the flybys, or just being in the room together and hearing each other, that I think is, again, so undervalued and needs to be really reconsidered as we go into the future of work and figuring out what this, dynamic of hybrid looks like.
Yeah, I agree. I miss our, our conference room, pitches that we would have, and just the team collaborations. And my space here too, we had a really beautiful outdoor patio. So when it was nice outside, we'd all go sit outside together, and we would do cookouts and just have a lot of fun things that we would do, Friday happy hours. You don't get that kind of thing when you're all working from home. It's like when you're done, and then you tap back into Zoom on Monday again.
Yeah.
So I think that's nice, and I do miss that. But at the same time, I've also learned how to effectively run a business by people working from home. I'm not afraid to hire somebody that might not even be local. I mean, I do work with a lot of freelancers that tend that you don't really see them a lot because they are working from home. But my employees were always a little bit different. But I think now I kind of have a good grasp of how that works, and feel more comfortable with it. I wasn't comfortable at all with it when it was first happening. It took me a while.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of managers out there that can, and owners that can say the same thing because it's so foreign, and
Yeah.
you've literally got to, kind of reconstruct how you measure somebody's productivity, and how you're communicating with them. And that is a huge learning process. And I think we need to give ourselves grace, for learning that and, leaning into that a little bit more. And did you have anybody that was coaching you or that you were going through or anybody that, you kind of was mentoring you through that? Or did you just like hard knocks, just kind of get in there, see what's working, see what's not, try some different things? How did you navigate that?
Well, when the transition was happening, this was all last year, is when I put my building, or the CEA building, up for rent. And it was hard because I had been in that building for 25 years. And literally, I would walk around the building crying constantly. I was just in tears because you're going through all, oh my God, look at our work. I'm going through all of our old like pitch decks and everything, and just all these memories were coming. I'm gonna get all
It's very
emotional just
visceral. I
talking
know
about
what
it.
it is.
But I was like a disaster. I was a disaster. My husband would be like, "But Kelly, come on, you gotta." I'd be like, "Look at all this stuff." I go, "I remember this campaign." I go, "Oh my God." I go, "When I pitched this division, this whole division, I would tell the story, of everything that happened."
And they were all here in person and we connected and it was awesome.
We would be here till 2:00 in the morning putting to pitch these like really big national companies, like no joke, 2:00 in the morning. We'd have to be at the pitch the next morning at 8 a.m. And all practice started. We called them dog and pony shows back then.
Oh yeah, we still do dog and ponies.
Everybody had their part where they got up and pitched something. I was like, that's what we did. And I was just like remembering all those things and all the people that had been there, and it was just sad, And I think Sandy Bean from St. Pete Girl Boss. I was having such a difficult time with it because I'm very extremely ADD. I'm very neurodivergent. So trying to pack up an office, obviously, for someone like that is going to be difficult. And then we were moving at the same time. We just bought a house.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to get into my new home and leave, move out of my building because I had a tenant I rented to, because I designed my space so beautiful. I got top rent for my space, which is really awesome. And I have really great people over there now. So I'm really happy about that. But it was hard. I'm like, what do you mean I have to get out of my space by January?
This is my space.
It was rough. So she kind of really helped me through some of those things. I just had somebody to talk to because I'm not the type to break down a lot. I try to put on this tough front. But I get on with her and just completely lose it. So she gave me some things to try to get myself organized and get over it a little bit.
That's awesome. You need somebody like that, at least one person somewhere in there that you can just kind of vent to and, like, dry your face off, get back up, get back out there, Kelly, But the struggle is real, and we went through very similar, our firm, kind of the same size as you. We've kind of been on the same, track historically. We did not own our building, but, we had a space that we, everybody came to, and, and our folks wanted to come back. We're a month in, and, they said, we need to be in the studio. We need to be collaborating. We need to hear each other talking. And, and so I feel blessed that we were that way, but not everybody felt that way, not 100%. So you still have to manage that. And as a creative team also, it's how do you manage that work product now? And it does have to, most of it goes digital, and it's this whole different thing. And, and we have tangible things like you do too, we have finishes and, materials and things that we're dealing with. That's not something you can do virtual, So like you, we had to figure out how to balance that out, and be able to be in when we want it to be collaborative. But also we need to think about those folks that need the heads down time, and if they can't get something done in the studio, or if if they're neurospicy in some way, how are they dealing with these new environments. So so many things to think about.
Home productivity can be probably can get more done because obviously they don't have to worry about drive time and rush hour traffic. And it's interesting because you can tell that companies are saying, okay, people, it's time to come back.
Yes.
So they're getting, because they're paying for these big leases. I mean, if I didn't rent my building, even though there was a couple of us, I'm like, we're going back to work, paying for this. So, they kind of like rented it out, so I don't have to worry about it. But you can tell that that companies are saying it's time, because I think that they're probably noticing too, probably loss of productivity for some, and especially with the younger team members, is not getting the nurturing that they need to really help them grow.
That ongoing training that they get just from just absorbing it right all day long and hearing it.
People skills.
Yes.
Also, I think you miss how, because you're at your home working quietly by yourself, you're just newly graduated from college, but do you have a really good business people skills,
right?
Being able to talk to people and being able to have those interactions, being able to have, when you're in a work environment, you're going to have some uncomfortable time periods with people that,
yes, always.
Even with the smaller teams, you're a family, and, we have our little family, we get in little spats with each other. Sometimes it's, but
because you're human,
right?
I mean, you're going to have those differences, but you're also going to have that, connection.
Yeah.
And it's, our social capital. I mean, because we are human, that's like an innate thing in us that we want to connect. We need other humans, and I know there's tons of introverts out there that will say otherwise. But
Yes.
the reality is like there's still a connection, even if it's a one-on-one connection. You might not want to connect in a crowd of 20, but there's still, that one-on-one, and you might not feel it right now. But there is also truth in, a society where, depression and suicide and, a lot of these negative things that come from not connecting with other people are real, so we have to deal with that too. And I think employers, have a little bit of responsibility to kind of say, this is part of the reason why I need you to come back at least a few days a week, but be intentional about it. Come in, certain days, or let's create what that looks like, and let's be, open about it. I think that's the thing. Let's have some transparency about it. And I think with a small team, that's a little easier, right? It's easy to kind of sit, 10 or 12 people down and say, here's what we're going to do, so
yeah, because
we're also trying to scale it up for big companies, like how do we tell, 150 people the same thing? Well, we got to boil it down into their groups, their intimate teams. And that's how I think the communication, and those need to be solved. So there's some kind of, balance somewhere in there.
Even with the smaller teams, you'll have, half of the team that's like, okay, I want to do this. And the other side's going to be like, I don't want to do this,
And then your mom, well, this is what we're going to do,
But and you're right about the introverts, because in a marketing company, you have the different personalities, right? So usually the creative side of the group, and the programmers, right? The guys that are up, the women that are up there doing websites and working on all the creative, they tend to be very, very introverted. Half my team, like, they worked in a cave with the lights off up there,
right.
until the account managers and project managers walked in the room and, kind of was stirring the pot with everybody, because
yeah.
and they have the kind of the wars that go back between the two, and that's kind of the fun thing, but at the same time, you could see the introverts, like, even though the project managers and account drove them crazy, they still kind of like that interaction with them.
Yeah, I think it's just to feel connected, feel engaged in what we're doing, and particularly if they, can be proud of that work product that comes out of it too. And it's if it's a collaborative thing. And
yes.
I do think that's interesting because, and every company, every business has all those different types, we're all different. And then, the work that we're doing is different, and we do have rooms full of people that are in the dark, on screens. And, but I think we need to take that a little bit too and factor that into why are they coming back? Well, maybe those people just don't have a big enough monitor at home. Maybe we create these spaces, in a variety of spaces that gives them the opportunity. Well, I'm going to go in because I can work in this library environment where you're not supposed to have your phones on. The lights are dim. We have giant monitors that we can look at all these lines of code on, but then I have this kind of hospitality area right next to me that I can go mingle with the project managers and the other folks that are working working on the project. So I think, we can use space, like your beautiful space that you had designed. We can use space to foster, that not only the connections, but also the productivity in ways that maybe, some people aren't thinking about. So I think that's kind of on us moving into the future as business owners and leaders, to really think about all those parts and pieces, because we don't have enough pieces to think about already. But, how does that also help us, regain and, strengthen that, regain that culture, and strengthen that culture that we have too.
Yeah, I think to allowing, if you're bringing people back, because when I designed when we went through the remodel, it was in trend before COVID to have open workspace environments. So, I had an open room where I'd have 12 of them in the room all together.
Big old bullpen.
It's like, it was the bullpen
right.
concept, right? And that was like the big thing for ad agencies, that, it's like the big collaborative space. And, so I'm like, I built that up there. And like, of course that happened. I'm like, well, no one's going to want to come back here.
Right.
Because we all got to sit next to each other. Like, how's that going to work? I'm thinking how I'm going to put dividers up between everybody. And, and I think now that obviously that's over, but I don't know that the bullpen, is that concept still probably not as popular, right?
We have smaller ones, where it might have been seas of workstations. I would actually never subscribe to that myself. I feel like every company, every department needs to have a little bit, customized. I'm not saying every single thing needs to be different, but we need to think about how many people do you really need, before you have another section of workstations, or you have a buffer zone. I think it just makes sense that, you kind of have more of a pod and a neighborhood atmosphere. So, you should there are always applications where there's going to be folks that want to be in a bullpen, but let's, kind of contain it a little bit more and make sure that the folks that need a little less noise, maybe over here, maybe there's a buffer zone in between, and there's, a phone booth, a coffee bar, there's some amenities that can kind of be that collision space in between, versus just complete open everything. And then we have these perimeter amenities. I think we need to be a little bit more selective in how we're arranging those and shake it up. Frankly, we just need to kind of, take the neighborhood concept to the next level and celebrate each of these, not just personalities, but just like workflow. Does that really make sense that accountant is sitting in a group of 10 people when they're trying to run spreadsheets all day?
Right, no.
Let's understand what our people are doing
Yeah.
before we start prescribing the space, I think is what it comes down to. And like what you're doing, you're reevaluating that. It's a bunch of creatives. Do they really want to come in and sit in this giant open area? Maybe not. Maybe they need a couple rooms and they need to be able to come out and be together at certain times. So I think we can just, think about that in a different way. All right, so speaking of cool workspaces, I want to talk about this space for a minute because this is Second Soul Studios.
Yay.
This is your baby.
My baby.
And while we are out on location a little bit with this podcast, this is where most of it will take place. And so the team has been awesome at giving us different fireside settings, and so we can do chats and all. And so I'm just excited to be here, and this is such an exciting, kind of process for me. And, do you want to share any more about the studio and what goes on here?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions for you now that you've mentioned the process of a podcast, because I've been working. I think it's important for a small business owner or anybody that's thinking about podcasting, right? Because what I see happening with podcasts a lot is there's so many. Podcasting is very popular right now.
Yes.
And a lot of people want to start them. A lot of people do start them. But I think when they try to do it on their own, first of all, to figure out all the things, and you see all the steps that we went through, it's like a lot that you have to think about. And then even afterwards, just a lot to think about as far as the overall promotion and scaling and monetizing and those types of things. And, they say the average podcast doesn't make it past the first 6. And I feel that because of that, it's because they didn't, it's a matter of like taking in time, investing in that, to work with a company that can really help you walk through that process. And also when you're in it, always trying to pivot in ways that you're able to monetize and, in time find a way to make some money with it. So I just wanted to, what are your thoughts on
the ultimate, goal, I think, is to actually make some money on it.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think, I've actually talked for years about, I want to write a book and, and I think I shared this with you guys the day that we did the Reels event and we decided to move forward with this. I always thought, well, I'd really love to write a book because I'm this unique, weird designer where I'm an interior designer. I'm doing this almost 30 years. I co-own with my partner, Angela Davis, Create & Co. Architecture and Interior Design. So, but I personally live more in the side of like the strategic planning, space planning, programming, the strategy for our clients, the psychology of the space. And so I've sort of always been in this weird space where I enjoy, more of the nerd level of design. And so in talking about doing a book, I also realized that things change so frequently. I mean, especially with the evolution of the workplace in the future. And I thought, well, I think a podcast is better. I really enjoy digging into people's stories. And so I thought, well, this is much better than me sitting down and writing a book, right? I want to bring out the stories of you and other guests. And so as I started thinking about that, I thought, well, now I'm really overwhelmed because writing a book is one thing and getting somebody to help you, edit and publish is one thing, but doing a
I'm in the process
podcast,
of doing that right now. So.
while I'm still struggling with, anxiety of being on camera, there's imposter syndrome that comes up, there's my own, ADD or, I have never been diagnosed, but, I will squirrel in a second into different topics. All of those things just have kind of just quieted because you guys have made it so easy.
Thank you.
And you mentioned Christy earlier, and she's been great. She's behind the scenes. She's over there right now telling me that we need to wrap it up, and so I love it. And so far, it's been a really great experience. And I know that with the help of your team, we're going to go way beyond 6 episodes. This is episode 6 that we're recording right now. So
we don't usually let our clients launch until they get to 6 because that way, that first part, that's the most overwhelming and hard part. But when you're there, it's just like, okay, now you get excited to do when's the next one?
Yes,
okay, the hard part's over. Now I'm having fun with this and I'm ready to go.
I'm ready for that fun part. It is fun, but I'm still getting used to when we start. Okay, what am I asking? And then we'll finish up. I don't even remember what we talked about because it was so good and so much.
You get lost in the conversation.
You totally get lost in the conversation. So I'm so glad that it's recorded and we get to share it, with other people. And that's my hope more than anything with this podcast. Is we may talk about future of work, we may talk about psychology and design and all these seemingly unrelated things, but at the heart of it all, it's people and it's the storytelling and it's understanding that we're all human, right? And we all, yearn for connection in one way or another. And if this can help bridge the gap between all of these crazy, concerns that keep us up at night, as leaders and business owners and employees, just people, in those spaces, that's the hope. And that's what I hope that this podcast will bring to people. So thank you for helping me bring this to life. It's been amazing already, and I can't wait to see what the next year or so brings. So.
I'm excited to see what comes with this podcast. Also, and also thank you. I'd mentioned the book, right?
Yes.
So listen to all the stories.
Yes.
That you're going to get from doing this podcast. And you can utilize our awesome stories that we all tell.
That may be a book.
Put the stories in the book,
yes.
Right? Because it's going to give you so much content for that. So content for a book and the video content, everywhere you put that out will help you with your business, get more. And just honestly, it's just a fun thing to do that really, energizes people. And because you're giving people something that they really need.
I hope so. That is the goal. Speaking of books.
Yes.
You have a book coming out soon, right? That you've been working hard on.
Tell us one. Yes.
Tell us a minute about that, and then we'll get the rest of the info in the show notes, and you can get a link to that.
Yeah, so I have a book coming out. Hopefully, it was supposed to be out already, but the hurricane kind of knocked that away. But foundations in real estate, digital foundations for real estate. I have a niche in my digital marketing company where we serve a lot of home builders, developers, and realtors. Mm-hmm. And I felt during this time period it would be good to write a book because there's, again, a lot of younger teams that are running the marketing for these building companies, but none of them had really gone through a downturn in the industry because everything's been so good for the last couple of years. And we're kind of going back to the basics and back to a time period when we used to do different types of marketing that really worked, and also the different other pieces of marketing through being able to nurture these leads that are kind of like sitting out there for a long time. How do you keep them in the pipeline? Because a lot of people are really interested. I don't really feel a lot of these teams really know how to go about that because they're used to that instant sale and not the longer marketing process that you have to go
Online,
through.
social media, go, and then neglecting some traditional gems, right?
Additional things you need to do, the budgeting that goes around it, the planning, the understanding of the buyer personas. Like there's a whole thought process that they didn't really need to do. So I wrote a whole book on kind of how to go about that.
Awesome.
So
Well, we're excited. I know you're finalizing the cover, so we're not going to show that right now.
Yes.
But by the time we, drop this episode, we'll have that information and we'll have a link so that
Yes.
people know where to find the book.
yeah, there's a link for, if it's not out, there will be a link to sign up for the interest list. But I'm hoping by, definitely by the beginning of February, because I'm hoping to promote it at the Builder Show when I go there in Vegas.
Oh,
in
perfect.
February.
Okay, awesome. Well, share how they can find you, how our listeners and viewers can find you, Kelly Primeau and Second Soul Studios.
Yeah, so I actually have in my Instagram page, Kelly Primeau Consulting is a great place to go because I leave digital marketing tips for businesses almost every single day. So it's a great place for businesses to learn how to grow their marketing.
I'm grabbing those too, by the way. Those are awesome little tidbits.
Thank you. So that's a good place. And other than that, ceamarketing.com is my agency's website, secondsoulstudios.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook because all three companies are pretty lively on all the different networks where you can follow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. And thank you for taking this podcast on. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
We're having so much fun with it.
I know.
Yay.
It's great.
Thank you for being here with us.
Hey friends, if you enjoyed today's episode, please join in the conversation at Creative Place Podcast on LinkedIn or Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe. We're so glad you tuned in to Create a Place and look forward to seeing you next time.